Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. Today on the show, we're going to talk all things Wolves Suns from Game 1, an exciting Game 1 victory for Minnesota. Anthony Edwards was an absolute monster. We'll talk about his performance, how it evolved over the course of the game. Also, Karl-Anthony Towns provided exactly what the Wolves needed. And Nickeil Alexander-Walker, more discussion about how big he's going to be in this series as we head into Game 2 coming up tomorrow night. It's all coming to the show. Welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I am the host of Locked On Wolves. Happy Monday, everybody. And you better believe it's a victory Monday after a monster Game 1 win over the weekend. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. All right. So hopefully you listened to the live postcast on Saturday from Luke Inman and Tyler Metcalf. Of course, that's available on Locked On Sports Minnesota on YouTube. And also the audio is your last episode before this one, wherever you listen to audio podcasts. So lots to get to today, obviously. I'm going to try and kind of work, a couple days removed from the win. So it's not a true post-game pod. It's not just going to be like, hey, here's what happened in the game. I want to kind of connect this to Game 2. And obviously Tuesday we'll do like a full Game 2 preview, and that'll be, a bit more to that. So I'm going to take you through a couple of different things that I want to pull out of this game as we move to Game 2. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, as I mentioned, the Open's a big one. I want to obviously talk Ant, talk Cat, talk rotation, what Chris Finch did there. So a bit different than a regular post-game pod. So we're going to get to all that stuff here today. First of all, though, a big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. And you can follow on X at Locked On T-Wolves and also at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, C-K-E-N. All right. So let's talk about, I guess, just quick immediate reaction. Like what are the cliff notes? What are the, the talking points that the talking heads are going to talk about, right? Obviously, Anthony Edwards first and foremost. I want to spend more time on Ant. Karl-Anthony Towns isn't getting talked about much. Like if you watched any of the segments on, NBA Countdown, NBA TV, TNT, whatever over the weekend, nobody's talking about Cat, right? Because Anthony Edwards is the storyline. And, the Wolves winning in spite of a rough Mike Conley shooting night. The Wolves defense, rightfully so. Rudy Gobert was fantastic. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who I'm going to talk a ton about today. But I want to start with Karl-Anthony Towns because Cat was exactly what the Timberwolves needed from him in this game. The line is modest, 19 and 7, 4 assists, only 9 shot attempts, and only 27 minutes played in this game. We'll talk a little bit more about the rotation later. But Karl-Anthony Towns wasn't used all that much in the second half, but especially in the first half, he was exactly what the Timberwolves needed. Remember, Phoenix hit that 3 at the buzzer in the first quarter. They were up 1 going to the second. There was a little bit of momentum that got sucked out of the building, and the Timberwolves quickly got Phoenix into the penalty in the second quarter, which was monstrous. It was huge to get them in this penalty. And Karl-Anthony Towns shot, I believe, 6 of his 8 free throws in the second quarter, if I'm not mistaken. And he made all of his 8 free throws for the game. 8 of his 19 points came at the line. And the Timberwolves used him in a couple different ways. And he missed that opening three-pointer he tried to shoot early in the game. And I'm glad he shot it. And I think it makes sense for Cat to shoot trail threes in transition where he's very comfortable shooting them at the top of the circles, right? Straight on is his favorite three-pointer. He hit a big one deep as the Wolves were pulling away late in the game. But he missed that one early, first or second possession for Minnesota. I think that's great to get him that shot because if he hits it, those floodgates are going to open and he's going to be that much more comfortable shooting threes. I think him hitting that second one late was huge. But the bigger thing for me was we talked a lot on the show last week about Karl-Anthony Towns playing more in the mid-post, right? Playing free throw line extended where the Wolves have liked to use him and how there the Suns can double him a little bit easier. And he still caught the ball there and did a good job of backing down a little bit closer. He had a couple low block post-ups. One of those post-ups led to the pass to Rudy, the kind of behind the head pass that Cat likes to try and make, and it hit. It led to a Rudy dunk, I think a Suns timeout. He also had that low block possession where he made a nice pass. He had another one where he had an and one over Kevin Durant. And those touches were great. They didn't actually use him at the nail as much as I was expecting, which I talked about last week. But to see him get catches with his back to the basket, which makes it generally more difficult to bring a double team as long as Cat is reacting quickly to the double. And he did in this game. He had some very nice passes where he just got the ball in rotation. When he had the opportunity, he got to the line. It's hard to ask for a better performance from Karl-Anthony Towns. The 19, 7, and 4, only 2 turnovers. And he wasn't in foul trouble. I know he only played 27 minutes, but that was just more because Nickeil Alexander-Walker was playing so well. And Rudy was playing extremely well, and the Suns were struggling to score against that lineup for Minnesota. It just didn't make sense to push it with Cat when he had, some minor foul trouble. So Cat, fantastic performance. It's exactly what the Wolves needed from him. He didn't try to do too much. He didn't have he had one offensive foul. I guess one of his 2 turnovers was an offensive foul, and it was, by the way, a bad call. It was when he was trying to post up Kevin Durant in the, I believe, 3rd quarter, and he was called for hooking Durant when, I don't know, not just like back in the day, but like now, I mean, that's how you teach getting post-up position, right? He wasn't gaining an advantage. It was 2 guys being physical, and Durant is good at selling that contact. And we talked about this quite a bit on Friday. Thankfully for the Wolves, that was the only time in the game where that happened, where Kevin Durant was able to sell that contact to the officials. And it didn't end up becoming a recurrent problem. Defensively, I thought Cat put up a fight. Durant made some tough shots early. And no, it is not a winning proposition for Minnesota to have Karl-Anthony Towns guarding Kevin Durant in space. But in what's the playoffs, a lot of times are a pick your poison proposition, right? Like you do have to pick what you're going to do. And as we talked about on the show, you'd rather have the length of McDaniels on either Durant or Booker, and you'd rather have the physicality of Ant and the size of Ant on Durant or Booker. And both those guys, obviously, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, all 3 of those guys move much better laterally, of course, than Karl-Anthony Towns, right? So to put Cat on Durant and at least make Durant shoot oversized, and I know KD is one of the best, period, to ever do it. Certainly one of the best mid-range artists of all time, and he made some really tough shots early that allowed the Suns to build, a 2-3 possession lead early in the game. But guess what? The rest of the Timberwolves perimeter defenders shut down Devin Booker to the tune of 5 of 16 shooting. Bradley Beal only had 15 points in this game, only got 10 shots up. It's pick your poison with those 3 guys. And yeah, you'd rather have Bradley Beal shooting the ball than Kevin Durant. But if Bradley Beal and Booker are both going to be sub 20 points and, combined to shoot under 50% from the field, you can handle Durant getting 31 as long as nobody else on that team is beating you. And that's part of it with Karl-Anthony Towns. Can he provide some resistance to Kevin Durant? And the answer was yes, he did. And he made Durant shoot over him. He made Durant work. And that's really what the Wolves are asking Cat to do. Now, could that hurt them in one of these games? Absolutely. They're not. It's very, very unlikely. I don't think the Wolves are going to sweep the Suns. Remember, my pick was Suns in 7. The Wolves aren't going to sweep this series. There's going to be a game where Kevin Durant has a bunch of buckets over Cat, just like he did in the first quarter of this game. But it's forcing him into those difficult shots, not letting him get easy catch and shoot threes, which he had a couple of them in this game, but limiting those opportunities, not allowing him to get into a crazy rhythm, and the Wolves should be just fine. Again, pick your poison is a really, I think, a kind of a good way to say that. I want to talk a little bit about what worked for the Suns offensively that the Wolves need to look out for. I obviously want to talk about Ant. We'll get into Alexander-Walker. Lots to get to today. I also want to talk rotation. So we'll do all of that coming up here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at Monopoly Go. I have been told my whole life that I'm a competitive person. Many of us are. I'm super competitive. I absolutely have a competitive side. My competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist on Monopoly where you play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. The best part, though, is messing with your friends. You can charge them rent in your iconic properties, just like classic Monopoly. You can also heist their vaults of riches for yourself. The leaderboards will show you who the biggest Monopoly tycoon is as well. And it's not just my competitive side that loves it. You can team up with your friends and people all around the world in timed tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now free on the App Store or Google Play. Today's episode is also brought to us by our friends over at Game Time. Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace in Major League Baseball. We're less than a month into the baseball season. But I mean, it's the perfect time. It's spring weather, right? It's at least starting to be nice outside. It makes getting tickets. Game Time makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer you get to first pitch, which is awesome for people like me that procrastinate and buy tickets at the last minute. With killer last minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Game Time also has last-minute deals, which, as I mentioned, is awesome. If you procrastinate, you wait till the last minute to order tickets. You're on the way to the game thinking, oh, shoot, what's the best way I can get a good deal? Well, Game Time can save you up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, as well as concerts, comedy, theater, etc. I attend all those types of events, and all the time I am late on buying my tickets. But don't worry anymore when it comes to Game Time. Plus, they have flash deals. You can save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or the event that you're attending. They also have zone deals, all-in pricing, views from your seat. All of the above are awesome. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Do you watch Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day long? If you do, no doubt you have to turn down the volume with all the shouting. Instead, make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Seriously, the biggest stories will just get fed right to Locked On Sports Today. We'll bring you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, let's talk Anthony Edwards. I can't go any longer without talking Ant. He struggled in the first quarter of this game. He hit a couple of shots. Actually, his shooting percentage was good throughout, but he had 4 first-quarter turnovers. He finished the game with 6 assists, which, you know, nobody's talking about that, and they shouldn't be because he had 18 points in the third quarter and turned this thing from a 10-point halftime lead, which was nice, to a 20-point lead by the start of the fourth quarter, almost single-handedly. Anthony Edwards offensively and Rudy defensively in the third quarter is what really, and also Jaden McDaniels defensively is what did that. But even early in the game, of those 6 turnovers, there were a couple bad passes, but overall the decision-making in my mind wasn't all that bad, just some of the execution. And the other thing that I don't think is being talked about enough, 9 rebounds was huge in this game. Yes, Gobert had 16. Yes, the Wolves had 52 rebounds to the Suns' 28. But Anthony Edwards getting 9 rebounds, like Kevin Durant was asked after the game, what's the deal with the rebound? And he basically was just like, well, they're a big team, and that's true. And Gobert had 16 to the Suns' 28 as a team. But Anthony Edwards had more rebounds than everybody on the Suns. Individually, Anthony Edwards had more rebounds than any individual player on the Phoenix Suns. And we're not talking enough about him and his, because remember, this is a thing that has kind of came and went for Anthony Edwards over the 4 years of his career. Early in his career, I harped on this quite a bit. For as big and physical and athletic as he is, and he obviously grew after he got in the league, year 1 to year 2 or whatever, like the rebounding numbers should have been better. And they have gotten better. And this year, it was still a little inconsistent where he'd have these 9 rebound games, 10 rebound games, and then he'd have a 1 rebound game. But we've seen more and more of this. And the common thread that I think we're going to see, and we should see it again Tuesday, is with rest, Anthony Edwards is like in the playoffs where he won't play any back-to-backs. I think we're just going to see an unbelievable playoffs overall. I'm getting a little off track from the game itself, but seriously, I tweeted something out to this effect after Ant made a bunch of threes in that third quarter. Remember the three-point shooting was under 30% the last few weeks for Ant? His legs were starting to go. And I get he's 22, but man, it's a long season. He plays virtually every night. He plays through everything. When he's questionable, he plays, right? He had his legs back in this game, and that contributes to overall activity. There's obviously the playoff adrenaline. There's the home court atmosphere, all that stuff. That contributed to 9 rebounds in this game. It contributed to 4 of 8 from outside the arc in this game. It contributed to the third quarter being his biggest quarter and not the open to the game. Ant is built differently. We know that. But getting those days off is going to make him superhuman in the playoffs. And we saw that in this game. And back to his decision-making, I thought it was good overall. I thought the biggest thing for his performance was getting out in transition and getting some easy-ish, it's never easy, but easy-ish mid-range jumpers. There were a couple possessions. There's one he had in the first half that was right at the free throw line. He pulled up and Beal kind of faded off him in transition. And that's when you're going against usually one guy or at least an unset defense. And instead of a loaded up half-court defense where it's 1 to 3 players, or 2 to 3 players, I guess when it's Ant, loading up on the ball, a set defense is always harder to go against. And Ant is so dynamic, and I've been harping on this all season. He a lot of times is the reason this team plays slower. He will get the ball and he'll slow the pace, right? He doesn't often push. He pushed a little bit early in this game, and I thought it got him in a rhythm. It got the Wolves offense in a rhythm. And the Phoenix Suns have a good defense when they're set. They've been improved. I know they were kind of middle of the pack, but last couple months of the season, they were a top 10 defense. And we saw that in, at least that second loss to Phoenix from a couple of weeks ago, earlier in April. We saw how good the Suns defense can be. But Ant pushing in transition, and he actually said something to this effect after the game. He said something about how, getting the mid-range, getting the distance, feeling his shot helps set up his three-point shot. And that 100% happened in this game. He was better from the mid-range early, and it opened up the three-point attempts later. He ended up being 10 of 16 on twos and 4 of 8 on threes in this game. He only got to the line for 2 free throw attempts, which surprised me. And of course, in the first quarter, I think there were 3 combined free throw attempts, and they were like 20 in the second quarter. It was just insane, or 22 or something like that. The officiating was very inconsistent early in the game, and I didn't have a problem with it. This is just a quick side note. I'm totally fine with this series being, basically a no blood, no foul, old school playoffs. And it wasn't, because there ended up being a ton of calls. But the way this thing was officiated early actually benefits the Wolves, because Minnesota is a better defensive team. They need to be physical. Devin Booker doesn't want that smoke. He doesn't want to play physically. He's going to flop when he gets the opportunity to try and get to the line. That's part of his game. And I'm not taking anything away from Devin Booker. He's an incredible shot maker. But they got in his jersey in this game and made him shoot 6 of 15 from or 5 of 16, from the field. He only had 6 free throw attempts. That's fine. He'll get to the line 6-8 times a game. That's totally fine. He just can't get these double-digit free throw games. Durant still got to the free throw line 9 times. But some of that was when the game was getting to be out of reach. And early in the game, if it's established that in this game, the refs reverted to calling more fouls later, but if it's at least somewhat established that, hey, we're going to let some contact go, that helps the Wolves massively over the course of this series. It may be frustrating in the moment. And there were a couple that Ant should have gotten the line on and he didn't. But grand scheme, that's going to help Minnesota. All right, couple things quickly here. Beyond Ant. On offense for the Suns, Phoenix tried emptying the corner and doing some empty corner pick and roll stuff. And basically that's to help keep the Wolves from getting help defense, from having a low man to step up from that same corner, right? Where there would be somebody posting up, spotting up, where the Suns would have somebody spotting up in the corner. Otherwise, it's to help Phoenix schemes that to try and avoid help defense coming from that corner for Minnesota, right? And it worked a couple of times, and they kind of got away from it, and the Wolves kind of forced them out of it as well, because they were doing such a good job at kind of navigating the ball handler anywhere, or getting around the screens, I should say, navigating the ball screens defensively. There was some crazy shot making early from Durant. We talked about that. There was some stuff from Booker, especially in transition. Even if you get a hand up, he's going to make shots sometimes, but nothing else worked for Phoenix. Like, there were a couple of those possessions. There was one where they had kind of a twist action in the middle of the floor that got Nurkic a dunk. But like, the Wolves are happy to leave Nurkic open outside the arc. And Nurkic was not very good in this game. He only attempted that 1-3, but he wasn't great. And then Drew Eubanks was even worse. He only played 9 minutes, and Eubanks was a minus 14 in this game. So what the Suns ended up doing is they played, 15 plus minutes of Kevin Durant at the 5, essentially. And they like to do that. The Wolves killed it in this game. Durant actually had the worst plus minus of anybody on the Suns in the box score. So other than the empty corner pick and roll, there wasn't anything in the half court that consistently worked for Phoenix. The adjustment there for Minnesota is just to simply be better on the ball. And again, for the most part, they were good. And Gobert's just got to be effective in that drop. And he was. And when Towns was put in actions, I thought he did a good job when he was at the level. I thought he did a good job stepping out and contesting. And the other thing Phoenix tried to do is get switches and put Gobert in space. There was that one possession where Gobert did an amazing job staying in front of Booker, and then Booker tightened up the sideline, made a tough reverse layup, fell over, tried to draw the foul, didn't get the foul call. But that was like the only time that really worked. I mean, Gobert's in that same corner. Durant stayed in the first half. I think it was second quarter. Durant in that right corner in front of the Phoenix bench. Gobert also stayed in front of Durant on a similar play, and he tried a tough fadeaway from essentially behind the backboard on the baseline. Gobert can move his feet. He can play in space. And again, I keep coming back to this. They're going to get more rest. They got 2 more days off before they play Tuesday. Then they get 2 more days off before Friday. These Wolves defenders, like, if you want to switch Gobert into space, like, I mean, it's not my favorite thing if I'm Minnesota, but there's things I'm more scared of than Gobert in space guarding a 35, 36, whatever Durant is year old, right? Like, Kevin Durant's insane, and he's going to make some tough shots. But you still want a contested 19-footer from Durant with Gobert contesting it over an attempt at the rim, which Phoenix isn't trying to get a whole lot of anyway, or over a Booker spot up that's semi-open over a smaller player, right? So, like, if Phoenix wants to do that, fine. It's their funeral if they keep putting Gobert in space and thinking they're going to score regularly against that. I don't care who it is offensively. I really don't. I mean, Durant is that good, or excuse me, Gobert is that good as a defender. And again, over the course of a game, it's just not a winning strategy if you're Phoenix. I really don't think it would be. All right. Couple quick things about the Wolves on offense, and then I want to talk rotation, and then we'll do studs and duds here to close out the show. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch your winnings roll in. You can get in on the playoff action here now that the NBA is in the playoffs. So win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level during basketball's postseason. You can win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You could turn $10 into $1,000 with basketball, hockey, and college basketball entries. Well, I guess not college basketball anymore. NBA basketball, hockey, and more today on Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the app today. That's the Prize Picks app. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA, for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right, couple more things here quickly before we get to studs and duds. On offense, the Timberwolves tried to get some switches to attack Grayson Allen. And, well, you know, on Sunday in Game 82 of the regular season, Grayson Allen did a pretty good job defensively when he was guarding Cat. I mean, we've seen teams try and guard him with small guys, right? Like Boston did it with Drew Holiday, which is a completely different animal, right? Drew Holiday is one of the best 5 defensive players in the league. Grayson Allen isn't. But that same idea, right? Like, guard Cat with a smaller player, frustrate him, get up underneath him. You know the refs aren't going to call a foul if you've got a small guy guarding a big guy. They just don't. You can do anything you want. And then Cat gets called for offensive fouls because he's careless, and then you also the big on a small type of a thing. Well, the Wolves generally were trying to seek out those Grayson Allen matchups. Now, this was before Allen sprained his ankle, and it sounds like he's game to game, day to day, moving forward. He only ended up playing 25 minutes in this game. But before he got hurt, he was 0 of 3 outside the arc on the other end of the floor. And again, the Wolves were hunting him in switches offensively, and it worked out. Like, that's one of the things the Wolves tried to do, in addition to getting Cat in the post and moving the ball quickly, as we talked about. Like, there was a big Nas 3 on a quick Ant ball movement. Just like Ant moving the ball is something I talked about a ton last week, and that happened. I haven't talked about Nickeil Alexander-Walker yet, which is a massive miss, and I guess this bleeds into the rotation conversation. I predicted on Friday that the Timberwolves would win a game in this series with Nickeil Alexander-Walker scoring 20-plus points and likely hitting 4 or 5 threes in that same game. Well, he hit 4 threes in this game. He scored 18 points. And was a plus 28. Nobody else in the game was better than a plus 19. Nickeil Alexander, or I'm sorry, Nas was actually a plus 22. But Nas was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic, especially early. The first half, when Ant was struggling with turnovers and not scoring a ton, it was Cat and it was Nickeil Alexander-Walker that were carrying this team. Because remember, Mike Conley shot 2 of 12. Gobert didn't score a whole lot in the first half. He made a bunch of free throws in the second half. But Gobert didn't score a bunch early. It was Nickeil Alexander-Walker, a little bit of Naz Reid, and it was Karl-Anthony Towns in the first half that helped the Wolves build this 10-point halftime lead. And Alexander-Walker was arguably, if it hadn't been for Ant's third quarter explosion, you would have said Alexander-Walker was the best player on the floor, period, in this game. And I talked a ton on Friday, so I don't want to go too much more into it. You can go back and listen to my prediction if you want, if you missed it on Friday. But the cliff notes are the Suns are middle of the pack in terms of giving up corner threes. They were very lucky this season in that they had the league's best defensive three-point percentage from the corners. I think a lot of that is luck. It's different than above the break threes. A lot of times corner threes are inherently more open because you don't have guys glued to the corner, right? They're weak closeouts, weak contests, flyby type contests versus like actual somebody's on you in the corner. And it's a little bit anecdotal, but in general, corner threes are just you get more of them in transition, right? So I thought the Suns had a lot of good fortune there. I think they'll give up more threes in this series from the corners because of the way they defend Ant. They load up so much on him that weak side corner is going to be absolutely open. The Wolves have to hit them. The Timberwolves were top 5 in both corner 3 attempts and percentage in the regular season. Nickeil Alexander-Walker was the league's best as a quarter 3-point shooter. All that calculation leads me to believe that the Timberwolves need to crush it from the corners in this series. And Alexander-Walker did that in game 1. The Timberwolves as a team, I think Naz hit one corner 3. I guess that was it. It was Na and it was Naz from the corners, right? There weren't as many overall 3-point attempts from the corners as McDaniels missed a couple, I guess, as I wanted there to be, or I expected there to be, but it was huge as the Wolves built this lead. And then as the Timberwolves continued to pull away, Alexander-Walker was a massive part of that. And we know Naz Reid's great from the corners as well. But Nickeil was awesome defensively. He came in the game, midway through the first quarter, almost the midway point. It was just tenacious defensively when the Suns had that 5-6 point lead they were kind of holding on to for a little while. And Alexander-Walker was kind of a shot in the arm for this team when he came into the game. Not that the Wolves never lacked energy, but you could still go from here to here, right? You can go from great energy to amazing energy with a guy like Nickeil Alexander-Walker coming into the game and providing the shot in the arm that he did. He was fantastic in this game. So kudos to Alexander-Walker. Real quick on the rotation for Minnesota, we saw Monte Morris kind of take back that backup point guard's role. However, he only played 10 minutes in this game, and 3 of them were garbage time, right? So he played 7 rotation minutes. The Wolves actually played significant minutes with Alexander-Walker running the point guard spot. And it wouldn't surprise me if we saw more and more of that as the playoffs go on. We saw that a little in the regular season. If he plays like this, of course you're going to see that. Where effectively Ant's initiating offense, but Alexander-Walker's the other guy that's going to handle the ball. With Conley off the floor and no McLaughlin in the game, no Monte Morris in the game. And Kyle Anderson got hurt after just 5 minutes. And it predictably in this matchup that mattered less, right? Kyle Anderson in this matchup is another body to throw at Kevin Durant and can be helpful. As I said Friday, I just don't like, and I saw people on YouTube in the comments, like, I get it. I understand why you might think slow-mo could help in terms of initiating offense, but this game was exhibit A as to why it's not that important. Because as long as Ant's moving the ball quickly and Cat is doing the right things, you don't need another straw that stirs the drink, especially when he's a guy that can't spread the floor. And so Kyle Anderson getting, like, obviously I hope he's fine. I hope he's healthy. They could use another body to throw at Kevin Durant. But it hurts them less when he's not available, right? This turned into a Na backcourt game, Na and Ant in the backcourt. Conley, still playing 27 minutes and Monte Morris playing 7 minutes in this game. The non-garbage 7 minutes, I think, were all in the first half, maybe slightly at the end of the third, early fourth quarter, if I remember right. But the rotation I thought was pretty interesting. And, he was one of just 3 guys off the bench to play more than 10 minutes, which is what you'd expect. I was a little bit surprised that, actually, no, it actually broke out about the way I expected it to. All right, real quickly, studs and duds, then we got to go. Of course, Anthony Edwards a stud in this game, 33, 9, and 6. You can live with the 6 turnovers if you're going to be that efficient from the field, and he will get to the line more as the series unfolds. For the Wolves to shoot 22 free throws and Ants only have 2 is kind of crazy. Another stud, Karl-Anthony Towns, 19, 7, and 4 was really, really good, and I know it was relatively quiet, and no one's talking about it, but I opened the show with it because we said, and I said on the crossover with Locked On Suns, Brendan Clean on Thursday, I said on Friday's show, Karl-Anthony Towns is the fulcrum of this series, right? He's got to do this. And 19 and 7 isn't groundbreaking, but it's very important when Ant gets off to a slow start and to have Karl-Anthony Towns not have all those turnovers like he had in game 82. He was awesome in this game. I really think he was very important to the Wolves' success. I could go Rudy with the third one, and he was great. He held down the paint. We didn't talk much about him today because I only have so much time, but I'm still going to go with Nickeil Alexander-Walker as my third stud. 18 points, 4 rebounds, 4 steals for Alexander-Walker, only 1 turnover in 29 minutes, and he basically ran point guard for stretches in this game. 7 of 12 shooting, 3 of 3 on 2-point attempts, hit a big layup as the Suns were trying to get some momentum at one point in the game, turned the corner, made a nice tough layup in traffic. 4 of 9 on threes. Awesome game for Alexander-Walker. I don't have any duds. I know Conley didn't shoot it well, but he had 7 assists to 1 turnover, was typically good defensively in this game, solid. McDaniels, very good defensively, did enough offensively. You'd love him to make a couple of threes, but, I thought this was a good McDaniels game. Really, really good on defense. No duds for me in this one. All right, Tuesday, we're going to set up what to look for based on everything we talked about today, everything we saw Saturday, set it up Tuesday night's game 2 in Phoenix. It is in Minnesota, a 6:30 Target Center tip on Tuesday night. We will have a Tuesday morning show for you, and then the postcast Tuesday night, of course, following the game live on Locked On Sports Minnesota on YouTube. All right, that's all we have for you today here on the show. A big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon at Fire TV. And you can follow on X at Locked On T-Wolves and also at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, C-K-E-N. Of course, the Locked On Wolves podcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.